Hi, I'm Ben Avery, and this is Strangers and Aliens. Now, Strangers and Aliens is a podcast over at strangersandaliens.com. It's a video feed that you're watching right here, and it's also a Facebook page. And like I said, the website, strangersandaliens.com. It's all about finding that connection between imagination and spirituality, between science fiction and fantasy and faith and Christianity, and taking the fun stuff over here and allowing that to inspire us over here and allowing that to get us to think about some things over here, taking some of that parabolic stuff that happens on this imagination side and applying it to our spiritual life. And today I have an application that I would like to just encourage you with and maybe even challenge you with a little bit. And it comes from one of my favorite science fiction franchises, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I was introduced to it through the book and the TV show that we saw on PBS, but was from England on the BBC. I think it was BBC. And the computer text adventure game, which maybe some of you remember that. And then later on was able to listen to the audio radio drama that they did, which is actually the first version of this story. And then, of course, there was the movie not too long ago. And I guess coming soon, there's a Hulu series. And so we'll see how that goes. And it looks like the Hulu series will be going through a book for each season or something like that. Of course, there's 5 books that Douglas Adams wrote for his original trilogy. And then there is a 5th book that someone else wrote that kind of ties up some loose ends, and it's okay. It's okay. But in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the idea is that The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a book that everyone needs if you're going to travel the galaxy and if you want to succeed and know what you need to know in order to make it through life as you're traveling amongst the stars as an interstellar hitchhiker. And there's lots that we could say about the actual Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy book, but we're going to look at another piece of gear that is very important to the Hitchhiker's Guide, just the franchise, all right? And that is the towel. So I'm going to read to you from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy from Douglas Adams, this, from the first book. It says this: The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy has a few things to say on the subject of towels. A towel, it says, is about the most massively useful thing an interstellar hitchhiker can have. Partly, it has great practical value. You can wrap it around you for warmth as you bound across the cold moons of Jaglabeta. You can lie on it on the brilliant marble-sanded beaches of Santragonus 5, inhaling the heady sea vapors. You can sleep under it beneath the stars which shine so redly on the desert world of Kakrafun. Use it to sail a mini-raft down the slow, heavy River Moth. Wet it for use in hand-to-hand combat. Wrap it round your head to ward off noxious fumes or avoid the gaze of the ravenous bug-bladder beast of Traal. A mind-bogglingly stupid animal, it assumes that if you can't see it, it can't see you. Daft as a brush, but very, very ravenous. You can wave your towel in emergencies as a distress signal, and of course, dry yourself off with it if it still seems to be clean enough. More importantly, a towel has immense psychological value. For some reason, if a strag, non-hitchhiker, discovers that a hitchhiker has his towel with him, he will automatically assume that he is also in possession of a toothbrush, washcloth, soap, tin of biscuits, flask, compass, map, ball of string, gnat spray, wet weather gear, spacesuit, etc., etc. Furthermore, the strag will then happily lend the hitchhiker any of these or a dozen other items that the hitchhiker might accidentally have lost. What the strag will think is that any man who can hitch the length and breadth of the galaxy, rough it, slum it, struggle against terrible odds, win through, and still know where his towel is clearly a man to be reckoned with. And so goes this running gag throughout the entire franchise of your towel. Being a man who knows where your towel is, or being a woman who knows where your towel is, or, just being a person who knows where your towel is. And that's the gear that I want to talk to you about. That as you are putting on the armor of God, to not forget to bring your towel. Don't forget to bring your towel. Towel is important for interstellar travel, but it is also important in the gear of a Christian. A Christ follower needs to make sure they bring their towel. Add it to your gear. Now, the deal with armor of God is that it's a fantastic passage of scripture that gives a wonderful picture of living life as a Christian. And, the metaphor is amazing. You've got the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of the Lord. You've got the shield of faith. You've got the breastplate of righteousness, the shoes of the gospel of peace that take you and protect your feet as you are going, and as your feet are beautiful on the mountain because you are bringing good news, the helmet of salvation, all these things. And they're cool, and they're exciting, and they're adventurous, and they inspire a lot of people. And why wouldn't they? I mean, but the point that I want to make here is that while you have the armor of God tends to appeal to that side of us that wants to go out, that wants to be aggressive, that wants to go out and win the battle, that wants to go out and fight the war. And that's valuable and that's important, but it's not the entirety of the Christian life. And that's why when I was thinking about this weak connection, the towel from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy caused me to think about how important a towel is to us as believers and followers of Christ. And so I'm going to take a look at a story here in the book of John. And as I do so, I want you to think about yourself. And I want you to picture yourself in this story. Who are you from this story? Who do you identify with? There are basically 13 people you can identify with. One is Jesus, okay? And that's the one that obviously we need to look to him as to, this is how I should act. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But there's 12 other people. There's Peter, the man who is just gung-ho about following Jesus, so much so that he forgets to do what he should do and maybe speaks out when he shouldn't. You've got James and John, two of the superstars in this group of 12, along with Peter, who are with Jesus in that group of 3 people who Jesus takes and does special things with that he doesn't do with the other 9. You've got James the Lesser, who we don't know too much about, but was probably just a younger brother and, who is just one of the younger people in the group and might not have had the same kind of respect that the other guys had. You have the guy who wanted to overthrow the government and who instead started following Jesus. You have Thomas, who was going to doubt what he heard about Jesus in the future after the resurrection. But before this, he's not Thomas the doubter to me. He's Thomas the dutiful follower who also tends to be the guy who's like, he's Marvin the android of these 12 disciples. Okay, if we're going to die, we might as well go with Jesus anyway, that kind of thing. And then you have Judas himself, who was going to betray Jesus and had already made arrangements. John chapter 13. Before the Passover feast, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. Now, when it was time for supper, the devil had already put it into the heart of Judas, Simon Iscariot's son, to betray him. Jesus knew that the Father had given everything into his hands, that he had come from God, and that he was going back to God. So he got up from supper, laid aside his outer clothing, took a towel, and tied it around himself. Next, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet and to dry them with the towel tied around him. He came to Simon Peter, who asked him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus answered him, "What I'm doing you don't realize now, but afterward you will understand." "You will never wash my feet," Peter said. Jesus replied, "If I don't wash you, you will have no part with me. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not only my feet, but my hands and my head. One who has bathed, Jesus told him, doesn't need to wash anything except his feet, but he's completely clean. You are clean, but not all of you. For he knew who would betray him. That is why he said, not all of you are clean. When Jesus had washed their feet and put on his outer clothing, he reclined again and said to them, do you know what I have done for you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are speaking rightly, since that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example, that you also should do just as I have done for you. Now, there's three things I want to point out there about what Jesus was doing as he went around the circle with his towel and served his disciples. As a children's pastor, I don't normally do a 3-part sermon, but today I kind of am. I got 3 points. They're alliterative and everything, so here we go. But first, I want us to take a look at Jesus's position here in this story. His position as the leader of this group, his position as a servant. So he has a position, he has a place in this small community of men who were iron sharpening iron. They were people who they ate together, they played together, they slept together, they traveled together, they learned together, they spoke together, they laughed together, they cried together. This is a group of men who became great friends over the course of these 3 years of his ministry. This is a community. And Jesus had a position in this community. Jesus also had a position, though, in this community as the leader. He was the rabbi. He was the teacher. He was the one that they were following from place to place. He was the one that they were listening as they went from place to place. But here in this story, he takes a position as a servant. He was not just a leader that they would follow, but he was a servant leader. He did not just place himself in a position of authority, but he placed himself in a position of servitude. And that leads to the next point, is that he took a posture of service then. He got his towel. Always remember, bring your towel. He was a man who knew where his towel was. And he made himself low. That idea of whoever will be first shall be last, whoever will be last shall be first. He was first because he put himself last. And he was prepared. He had his tool, that he was ready so he could take this posture of service. And it was not just an emotional posture, and it was not just a social posture. It was a physical posture that he took, where he got down in front of these men who were his friends, who were his group, they were his community. He got down low by their feet so he could take care of the mess that they needed to be taken care of. That physical need that they had, he physically brought himself down low and took a posture of service with his towel. But the third thing I want us to take a look at here are the people that he was doing this with. The people, all of them. Which one did you identify with? Did you identify with the superstars? Did you identify with those special 3, sometimes 4, but mostly 3 of the disciples who got to do all the stuff with Jesus? Did you identify with the kid, the one who was young, maybe looked down on? Doesn't get talked about very much at all. I mean, there's some other people who they didn't get talked about hardly at all in the Bible. And when I wrote my book about the disciples, each disciple had a chapter that was their biography. And because of the way the pages worked out, each disciple got a title page, and they had to end on an even number. And so it was either, do I do 1 page for them, or do I do 3 pages for some of them? Peter gets 32 pages, but then you have some of these other guys who, they're in the way in the background, and they got 3 pages. We don't know anything about them. Do you identify with one of them? Do you identify with Thomas? The guy who is just going to be like, I don't know what we're doing, but I guess I'm going to go along with it. Did you identify with the betrayer? the one who betrayed Jesus? Did you identify with that one as someone who you look at yourself and say, I've done so many wrong things. I call myself a believer, and yet when no one's looking, this is what I'm doing? Is that who you identified with? Whoever you identified with, Jesus got down in front of them and served them and loved them. And he doesn't just take care of us, he cares for us and loves us. And that's what he did. That's my word of encouragement right there, is to remember your position in Jesus's posture. He loves you. He loves you no matter who you are. Whatever your position is, as you are like close or you feel far away from him, he loves you and wants to take care of you. But I also want to challenge you. I want to challenge you with Jesus' words where he says, starting in verse 13, you call me teacher and Lord, and you are speaking rightly, since that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you also should do just as I have done for you. And most of you who are watching this, you call him teacher, you call him Lord. So I just want to encourage you and challenge you to get out there and do what he was doing here. To put yourself in a position where you can serve. Whoever you are, put yourself in a position to be able to serve and put yourself into a posture of service. And also, remember, as he was serving all of these men, even the one who betrayed him or was going to betray him, that's us. That's us going out, putting ourselves in a position and posture of service for everyone, even those who have hurt us, even those who are lower than us, quote unquote, lower than us. Jesus is speaking to you and me when he's saying that. I just wanted to share this as I was thinking about some things to share on our Strangers and Aliens videos. This came up and the idea came up and I've been praying about, like, I don't know who this is for, but there's hopefully someone out there who's going to be just encouraged, maybe, like I said, maybe challenged. But as we make this connection, are you someone who knows where your towel is? And so in closing, I just want to say this. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for spending time with me. If you like what you heard here, please drop us a message. Let us know what you thought. Please like and subscribe to this channel. And also, don't forget to bring your towel. So as you're out there, traveling between the stars on your interstellar journeys, I want to say, Godspeed.